brand socials are like Hinge at the minute. They like tease people with all this great content and then you don't hear from them again.
That's Daisy Morris, author and founder of The Self-Hood.
Grace from Diary of a CEO mentioned their most valuable marketing tool is their Telegram group. Stephen shares voice notes, and she said that informs so much of how we develop the podcast.
In this episode, Daisy reveals her exact social strategy.
You look at McDonnell's, who have got millions and millions. They're uploading iPhone content because they know that's what's going to land.
The 10-step framework anyone can use to build a profitable community in 2024.
How do you practically start creating a community?
The first thing is to really understand why are you actually building a community in the first place. Secondly is to know your story, and then actually
The bad habit that's costing you millions.
social media is rented land. We've had various blackouts over the last few years where everyone loses their head because they're like, oh my gosh, all of my business is on there. So if social media collapsed tomorrow, I would consider an intimate space, a WhatsApp community, broadcast channel, even a newsletter.
And loads more.
Like if I said to you, what's the number one standout post you've seen on social media today? You'd probably be like, God, I can't remember, but you've probably seen thousands. So you also have to repeat yourself a lot.
I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you do. Let's dive in.
Daisy, thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you so much for having me.
I did the podcast with Grace Andrews from Diary of a CEO, and one of the books that she recommended was your book, Community is Your Currency.
Yeah, love Grace. She's amazing. And yes, that's my book.
The way you speak about building communities and why it's important really resonated with me. And it really resonated, I think, with a lot of people in my audience who said that they'd since followed up and read the book. So yeah, I'd love to use this podcast as a bit of a kind of masterclass for anyone who's thinking about building community in 2024 and beyond. Maybe we'll also touch a little bit on how you see social media and how you've built a personal brand and ended up publishing a book, which is pretty amazing as well. How do you describe what you do?
I think my expertise is community, but how I deliver that comes in various different methods. So I have a side agency. I believe that for any person, brand or business, having a ripple effect of advocates is so much more powerful than any other form of marketing, and it is the future. So a lot of the work that we do is centered around community building, but within that you have content, paid ads, strategy, and then how you actually uniform all that and bring it together. And then I also guest lecture at a few unis. I create content for brands. So I have a partnership with brands like Adobe. I run my own events and workshops. So it's like I said, I used to feel a bit like, oh my gosh, what do I do? It's really hard to explain, but I'd say I'm a community expert, but I deliver my expertise in various different formats. But yeah, community is my bag. I love it so much. I could literally talk about it for hours. So I'm really excited to be having this conversation.
Why is it important that brands, content creators build community?
And peer-to-peer advocacy will always reign supremacy over any form of marketing. If I go on TikTok and see a stranger and it's not a paid ad saying, oh my gosh, you have to try this, that's way more powerful than a brand serving me a glossy Instagram ad. Like, that's just the reality. And that's not to say that ads don't serve a purpose in the marketing funnel, but I think all brands and creators should be striving for people who champion them behind the scenes. So an audience, I always say, is a group of people who follow you, engage with you. Maybe they like your posts, maybe they comment, they might reply to your emails. A community is a group of people, a segment within that audience who go to the pub, tell their mates about you, they rave about your product to their sports teams, they go into their in-laws' house and shouting about all of the work that you're doing, but they're also connecting with each other. So it's almost like that ripple effect. Like, how many times have you heard someone say, like, oh, I'm an Apple person? It's like that if you know, you know kind of effect. And community is hard work. I think brands use that phrase all the time, like, oh, we're so proud to have you in our community, or thanks for being part of our community. And I'm like, you haven't got community, you've got an audience. Communities take time. You have to understand people. You have to listen. You have to have conversations. You have to be like in the comments section, observing what people are saying. And it amazes me that brands aren't using social listening tools yet. They're not speaking to their community. And I think it's really interesting to see the dynamic. Brands used to drive cultural and community currency, but now communities drive cultural currency. Like, we have the ability to determine if a brand is cool or not overnight. Like, we drive that conversation as consumers. And I think brands need to wake up to that and lean into that. And creators, I work with various different creators on their own personal brands. And it's about really understanding how their community feels about them, the kind of content they're responding to, and serving a purpose. And I hate the phrase adding value because it's so overused, but it's kind of fact. Like, we use socials now to be entertained. There's, social media's biggest competitor is Netflix. We're all competing for people's time. And if you want to build a community, you can't just sell and expect in return. You have to entertain, you have to inspire, you have to tell a story, you have to give people a reason to resonate and connect with you. We see 10,000 marketing messages a day. Like, consumers aren't stupid. We know when we're being marketed to. So it's harder than ever now to cut through. So I think investing in community building, it's not just a buzzword. This is a long-term strategy. It's about building a sense of belonging, creating a space that people can connect in and feel part of something within. And that's how you build an emotional connection. And that is how you build loyalty and advocacy. So I'd say, like, that advocacy piece, that's why it's so important, because people are doing free marketing for you. They're shouting about you without being paid, without being prompted by you.
Yeah. How do you know someone's into CrossFit? They tell you. I think that's a good that's a good example of it.
Exactly. That's a great example.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's the oldest trick in the marketing playbook is someone else recommending a product like that's worth 10 times
totally.
an ad that you put out as a brand or as an individual. How do you practically start thinking about fostering and creating and cultivating community? Because I've been there with brands or social accounts, and you've got hundreds of thousands or millions of followers, and you're putting out content, you're getting lots of views. What are the 10 steps to building a community?
So the first thing is to really understand the importance of community and knowing why you're doing it. Who is it for? What can I actually bring to the table? Why are you actually building a community in the first place? And it sounds like really cliche advice, and it's cliche because it's said all the time, and there's a reason it's said all the time. It's knowing your individual story. If you think of any successful business or a creator that you love, you typically tend to know a bit about their story or what they're about. You understand their personality. And it's why we choose certain brands over others. It's why people are Apple people versus Android people. We buy into the story, the narrative, the brand. So I think the first thing is to get really clear on what you want to be known for. And sometimes I do lots of lecturing at unis, and I'll ask students, like, what do you want to be known for? And they're like, oh my gosh, that's such a huge question. And I'm like, okay, well, let's work backwards. What don't you want to be known for? And sometimes it's easier to be, okay, I don't want to be associated with X, Y, Z. So you're almost like putting that aside, and it opens up space to, okay, so this is the kind of things I would like to be associated with. And I think it's quite interesting. I speak to lots of different, like, big global brands through to startups and individuals. And quite often conversations come up around, like, is this compelling enough? Is this story strong enough? And I'm like, yeah, because it's yours and it's individual and it can't be replicated. And that's how you cut through noise. It's having really compelling stories that is ownable and that you become known for. And so I think it's also giving yourself permission to explore that story and craft that story over time. And don't feel like it has to be the finished piece. It took Nike 18 years to land on Just Do It. Like, they're one of the biggest brands in the world. So don't feel like you have to know straight away. But I think people want to get a flavour for who is this person, what do they care about, what are they talking about, what are they memorable for. Secondly is to know your story and to know what you stand for, to know the value that you bring, your personal values, your business values, your mission. What is it that you're trying to achieve through community building?
So we know what we stand for. How do we then find our people?
I always say to people, go and do your research on the social media platforms, but also go and get outside. If you're an illustrator and you're trying to appeal to comic fans, go to comic fairs, go and get some stickers made, go and give people your stickers, chat to people, get to know them. And I always say social media is your playground, and you get to make the rules. If there's a certain piece of content that you love, lean into that. Like, some of my friends hate being on video, but they have the most incredible Substack accounts that are literally like the highlight of my week when I get their emails through, and they've built these amazing businesses built around Substack subscriptions. So as much as I'm an advocate for getting out of your comfort zone, I also think if you continue to try video and you hate it to the point you resist it, to the point that you don't create and therefore don't post and therefore no one sees you, try another medium. Maybe it is writing, maybe it's Substack. Maybe it's that you create graphics, maybe it's that you create illustrations to communicate how you feel about the world, whatever that looks like for you. But I think over time, we've started to take social media really, really seriously. And I get why. It's exposing, it's vulnerable. But I think posting is the first part. If you're not sharing your work, if you're not sharing what you love, what you feel passionate about, no one's going to find you. Like, you could have all of the ideas of the world. If they're up here and not out there, you're not going to find your people. I'm also really into this idea of microdosing your confidence, so taking small steps. You don't have to post on TikTok 5 times a day in the first year of creating or first couple of months. Like, find your flow, give yourself permission to be creative, but take the ideas from your brain and put them out into the world. And I think once you start to speak about your story and your values, you naturally do just start to magnetize the right people. The 4th thing is to actually make your mark, get clear on what you want to put out to the world, what your message is, what you want to be known for, how you communicate that.
How do we know that it's resonating and finding the right people?
I think it's that piece around really listening to your community and your audience. And also, as much as they're engaging with you, engaging with them and having actual meaningful conversations. And that can be done at scale. So I think the beauty of starting from scratch, if you are in the early stage of your journey, is you don't know who your people are yet. So you have more time to connect with them, chat to them in the comments, go on their profiles, get a feel for the kind of jobs that they do, the kind of gigs they're going to, the brands they're wearing. And for big brands, using social listening tools like Sprinkler, Brandwatch, listening to the kind of conversations people are having about you and then participating in them is so unbelievably important. And I think community management is something that is so slept on. So a lot of brands will post and ghost. They'll create this amazing content and then they just like, it's like, I keep saying at the moment, like, brand socials are like Hinge at the minute. It's like they like tease people with all this great content and then you don't hear from them again. And it's like, you have to put the graft in and you have to chat to people and you have to make the time. So I think the brands that are investing more budget into community managers are flying. Like, people talk about Audi on Twitter all the time, X, sorry. And American Eagle are another one. They've got a broadcast channel and it's really funny, it's really engaging, but they're actually taking the time to take people on their journey, chat to them. Grace from Diary of a CEO mentioned in my book that their most valuable marketing tool is their Telegram group. And it's their smallest by far, but it's where they drip feed info and they get feedback. Stephen shares voice notes. And she said that informs so much of our campaigns and so much of what we choose to share and how we develop the podcast, because they're getting feedback direct from the source. So I think, once you start to create that content, really listen to what people are saying. Don't sleep on your analytics and have conversations to really kind of pluck more out of people where you can.
Yeah. Do you think you need to create that space on a platform like Telegram? Because I guess that's the challenge I see with a lot of my clients, even my own socials. It's like, you put out this content, you get a load of reach, people hopefully get some value from it, but then where do we like continue the conversation? And is it the comments, or is it Telegram? Is it like some other place, WhatsApp? I don't know. And how important is that? Because I especially feel that like that's slept on.
Yeah.
I feel like I personally need to be doing it. I feel like my clients, a lot of them, some of them have these things, but they don't really make the most of it. And then, you get Instagram has the community function comes along. It's like a hot thing for a month, and then we create it and then we forget about it and move on. So like, how do you think about the places that we can have these conversations?
It's a really good question, and that those spaces are what I like to call, and I refer to in the book as intimate spaces. And the reason that I advocate so hard for them is because social media is rented land. So if Instagram collapsed tomorrow, like we've had various Instagram blackouts over the last few years where Instagram just goes down for a day. Everyone like loses their head because they're like, oh my gosh, like all of my business is on there. So the reason that I advocate for them in the book and just advocate for them in general is not just because they're great places to have conversations, but if, you know, this rented land collapses tomorrow, where are you talking to people? But I think it's about finding a space that feels really manageable for you. So I host events for my community. I do them quarterly, or I partner with brands. And that's a really good opportunity for me to connect with my URL community, IRL, and actually have meaningful conversations. I get so much from those events because I personally think there's nothing like the real thing. However, if you're a big brand and you want to do that at scale, a WhatsApp community, a broadcast channel, even a newsletter, I would consider an intimate space because you have direct access to somebody's data. You've got their email address. You're not fighting against algorithms. You're directly in their inbox. So I think with intimate spaces, they also need to be managed well. They can't be half-assed. Like, oh, I'm going to like go hard on a newsletter for 2 months and then never hear from you again. So I think it's also about being really realistic with the resource that you have. It might be that you do a free webinar every quarter where people can just jump on, ask you questions. It's an open Q&A for an hour and a half, and you're just giving back your time. Could be like the WhatsApp group, the Telegram, the close friends list, however you feel comfortable doing that. But I would say that they need upkeep. You need to actually invest time into them. Otherwise, they just become redundant spaces and people are like, why I'm in this Facebook group that hasn't been active for like 3 months. 5 is about sharing your magic. So go and identify the platforms and the spaces that you'll do that in. How will you deliver that? Will you do that through video content, a podcast, a Substack channel? Then establish a content creation process. So is it a newsletter? Is it the video? And if so, how are you going to go and then actually execute those things and get really clear on the formula, the way that you'll deliver that. And also remember within that, you can experiment as well.
Yeah. What do you do? So, and how do you think about your own socials? Because you're Instagram, LinkedIn, are they your main two? And then what would yours intimate spaces be? Just the events, or do you have other?
I can talk you through my funnel.
Yeah, let's go.
So I've got TikTok is up here, which is where I mainly just experiment, talk candidly. Also, just a hack for anyone, what I quite often do is go through old Instagram posts or LinkedIn posts and I just talk about them on a video. If you're ever stuck for content, go through your old content. There's archives of really rich stuff in there. You don't have to reinvent the wheel for every platform. Equally, if I upload like a candid TikTok video in my dressing gown and it goes off, I'll repackage that into a LinkedIn post. So I tend to have TikTok up here for visibility. I often find that someone will come from TikTok, follow me on Instagram, and they're like, oh, I found you on TikTok. Instagram is my community space. I feel like I have really enriching conversations there. It's where I share like most of my self-hood content, my values-focused content. LinkedIn is also a good one for me. So I'd say like LinkedIn is also more of like a visibility thing. Instagram's here. And then Instagram, I drive people to my newsletter, which I send every 2 weeks, which is more of like a personal update of what I've been up to and then some really cool stuff I've seen in the online space with my thoughts on it that I maybe don't share on other platforms. And then at the bottom, I have my events, which is where I invite people to come along and just chat. And it is by far, for me personally, the most rewarding thing in the world, because I've had people come to my events and then they've gone on to create podcasts together. And to be a connecting thread and to watch people collaborate and form partnerships, friendships, that is where I feel most in my purpose. And that's where I feel most happy in the work that I do. But work out, like, I call it like the reach, act, convert, engage model. So reach is visibility, act is where they're going to take action, convert is where you're going to get them to buy from you, come to your event, do that kind of next step that brings them into the community. And then engage is like that constant communication. So what does your race model look like? What are the platforms that also feel right for you? And where you feel comfortable as well. So the seventh thing is your community journey. Think about the journey that you're going to take people on and the different methods that you're going to take them from awareness through to actual community member. Then this is one of my favourite ones, and it's so slept on. Number 8 is to collaborate with people. Quite often we see our competitors as a threat when actually we should be collaborating with them. Collaboration is key in 2024 and beyond. It's a great way to tap into new communities. It's a great way to grow your own communities and have more conversations. Number 9 is community management. So that's not just creating content, putting it out there and expecting people to engage. It's outbound engagement, going and talking to people, replying to comments, replying to messages, and really generating that conversation and actually taking time to talk to people in the online and offline space. And then the final point is to really get creative and allow yourself to be creative off screen. So take yourself on a creative date. There's a really great book called The Artist's Way, which is all about taking yourself on a solo breakfast or to an art gallery, spending time alone, spending time unplugged outside of your phone as well, and really allowing yourself to just think, because I think the more creative that we are outside of social media, the more creative we can be on social media. I always have my best ideas when I'm falling asleep or I'm in the shower or I'm sat on the bus just like staring out the window, because we're actually giving our mind space to think. So yeah, being creative is the final step.
Is community building profitable?
Yeah, absolutely.
Quick one, if you like the sound of this community building strategy, we've put a full breakdown, step-by-step guide in the description. You can go and grab it there and let me know how you get on.
What are some good examples?
I think community building is so cost effective because your community advocates for you. It's free marketing. If I go to the pub and my best friend says, "Oh my gosh, have you seen this new jewelry brand? I got this ad from them and I've been following their content. They're really funny, like they're founders from blah, 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 blah." I'm way more inclined to go and check them out than if I see an ad that they're probably spending loads more money on. Also, it's far more cost effective for a business to have a repeat customer who's loyal to them than to acquire a new one. Quite often, customer acquisition costs are way more expensive than sending an email from someone that maybe hasn't bought from you in a while, and taking the time to actually understand their buying behaviour, understand their wants and their needs, and bring them into your world. So I think it's free marketing. And also, like I said, the cost of acquiring a new customer is often more expensive than retaining one. So it makes way more sense to invest into, making people feel part of your world.
Yeah. And how do you talk to brands about that? Because I can imagine like it can be a hard sell. Like you need to hire a community manager, and the value and the reason for it is this.
I think giving examples is really helpful, and showing them the brands that are doing it really well. So there's one brand at the moment who I'm obsessed with. They're based in the US. They're called Good Girl Snacks, and they're just pickles. They're just jarred pickles. And they're these 2 Gen Z founders, and they've gone viral on TikTok, viral on Instagram. They've got this like diehard community. I went onto their website the other day and I was like, I'm buying these pickles. I was prepared to pay like good money for the shipping fee. I don't need pickles, but I love their journey so much. Unfortunately, they don't ship to the UK yet. But in my head, I was like, I want to understand this product. I want to immerse in this product. They do great brand partnerships. They're great at storytelling. They reply to most of the comments. Obviously, if a video goes viral, that's not always possible. But you really feel connected, and it's pickles.
Yeah.
It's pickles. And they're stocked in all these cool like LA shops now, because brands are starting to see the value of the community that they've had and the advocacy that they're gaining. So I always think with brands, if you can show them a competitor as well, that always really works.
Yeah.
And show them how their competitors are fostering community. But yeah, I think I do genuinely, as like far-fetched as it sounds, I do think it's the future, because from a more like technical perspective as well, with privacy rules and regulations, advertising is becoming way harder. The competition is bigger. TikTok bans happening. Like it's getting harder to reach people. And also I think consumers want and deserve more. There's so much choice available now. We want to invest our money into brands that actually give a shit. And actually care about about us investing in them. So I think it's like a two-way. I always say it's like an energy exchange. Like we should treat our community the way that we treat our friends. If someone's giving us time, shouting out our content, buying from us, like they should be rewarded for that.
Yeah. And when we're thinking about creating content for our community, what are the like really practical ways that you can foster that engagement and like the DMs and the replies and the comments? Do you think like of specifically, okay, this post is an engagement post, this post is a comment post, this is a community post, like I want this to drive a load of DMs?
Yeah, I think having an understanding of like, I always say to my clients, before you hit post or before you think of a post, always ask yourself, like, what is in it for the person that's viewing this? Like, what's the purpose? Why are we posting this? Because so often it's like, there's a pretty picture of a product and I'm like, what do you want me to do with that? And then they're like, oh, engagement's tanked. And I'm like, you haven't invited people into the conversation. So I think also having that warm-up period where if you have got a big launch or you're dropping a new collection or something big is coming, tease that out on stories. Don't just go, boom, here we are, because there's no context and it just gets lost. So I think it's also about providing context for what you're doing. Don't assume that everyone's going to remember everything you post. Quite often, brands and creators will post one thing about a course or a new service or a new product and they're like, no one's bought from me. And I'm like, how many social posts do we consume? Like if I said to you, what's the number one standout post you've seen on social media today? You'd probably be like, oh God, I can't remember, but you've probably seen thousands. So you also have to repeat yourself a lot, repeat your message a lot, find the things that you really want to be known for. So like my tagline is making URL as human as IRL. I use that in my content all the time because I want people to remember me for that. And you might feel like you're spamming people, but it's also, we can't expect everyone to remember everything we're saying. So I think having the intention, absolutely, as you've highlighted, don't be afraid to repeat what you're doing in order to get through to people, but also have a system and a workflow. And people hate to hear this, but if you're not organised with your content, you won't be consistent, and consistency is so key. And what I don't mean by consistency is posting 3 times a day just to get visibility. It's being consistent in your brand, your message, what you want to share with the world, how you show up visually as well as a brand. But without a workflow that's going to enable that, you won't be consistent. And everyone has a different flow, but that comes down to idea generation through to editing, scheduling, caption writing. There's loads of tools that enable that. There's scheduling tools, there's loads of editing tools, free ones that are great as well. And then there's also apps like ManyChat where you can say to people, comment X on this post and I'll DM you the full article or I'll DM you the link. So if you are talking about communities at scale, there is software and tech that's enabling that now. So I'm kind of like, there's no excuse because the technology is out there. But you also have to find the flow that works for you.
Yeah. How do you think about your content? Because your content's really unique. I mean, like the branding here is insanely good, and it's the same on all your socials, and the way you make content's like super unique to you. How do you think about it?
When I very first started, I wish I still had the post that I put out. I basically looked at all of like the big marketing agencies out there and was like, oh, I need to be really professional. And after about a week, I was like, this is grim. Like, what am I doing? This is so not me. And I developed a brand with a designer. And ever since, I think there's something really, and this sounds like a live, laugh, love quote off my mum's kitchen, but there is something genuinely really empowering about being yourself. And I think the second that I stopped trying to have this professional, sleek tone of voice, have this sleek, professional look and feel, that's when I really started to magnetize a community, and that's when my content started to build traction. That's when I started to get big clients and good content creation collabs. And I think people can really feel that from you. And when I think of my favourite creators, and when I think of like even people like Maddie Jepson on TikTok, who's just like hilarious. She's so herself. She's not trying to be anyone else. It might be a bit weird for some people, but like she has amassed this crazy following because she has just been herself. So when it comes to my content, I think it's about sharing stuff that really feels in alignment with my own message and sharing things that I think will actually impact my community. Some of it's planned in advance. I try and plan as much as I can in advance. But like today I posted something about the algorithm. I never usually talk about the algorithm, but I think this update is actually really important for my community. So I made something last night because it came to me yesterday. I've posted it today. So sometimes I can be reactive. Sometimes I have an idea and this burst of energy. And I also think being reactive is a good thing. Like as much as I speak about workflows, I think we all need to allow room to jump on trends, and if something's happening in the news or the media that feels relevant to our brands, absolutely, we need to lean into that. But I think being yourself, knowing what you stand for, I'm repeating myself, but again, that's my message. And just not being afraid to be yourself and show up online as you would offline. And that doesn't mean being really vulnerable and sharing the inner dark depths of your life. And talk about the argument you had with your boyfriend because he ate your leftover pizzas or whatever. Like, you don't have to go into that much detail, but I do think there's something really magnetic about people who are just fully themselves.
Yeah. How do you balance that? That is interesting. The more personal stuff. Do you like, how much do you share? And when you're creating your content, are you thinking, okay, my audience are people who want to build community, grow on social, so I can only do that stuff? Or do you mix in like growing your agency, I don't know, your brand deals, like how you think about them, like how do you set the limits?
Yeah, I don't try to be. I think I just naturally am quite an upfront, honest person, both personally and professionally. And I've always just been transparent because I think people like it and need it. And I really appreciate it when someone else says to me like, oh, I had a really bad week last week, this went wrong. I'm like, really rate your honesty. Because I think especially in professional careers, there's this expectation that everything has to be perfect and we have to have our shit together, and we don't. Like, I've had business mentors like who have worked for huge businesses who one-to-one have told me like, I made this mistake, this mistake, this mistake. And it's like, oh my gosh, I feel like I can breathe because everyone's winging it. So I always aim to be transparent with things that don't go right and things that I've struggled with or I'm working on. I don't really talk about my personal life just because it's not that interesting.
Yeah.
Don't really do a lot. But no, I just don't really feel the need to. I'd aim to be transparent where I can be.
If we're thinking about like things definitely not to do, what are they? What are the mistakes to avoid?
Posting when you're emotional, angry or frustrated. I have seen horror stories of big business owners posting on social media like selfies of themselves crying after like making loads of people redundant, and it's completely backfired.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, maybe sit with those things first. I was speaking to a friend recently and she said, anytime I have an idea for a post that feels a bit iffy, I'll sleep on it and I'll wait till the next day. And I think that's really solid advice. I think one of the darker sides of social media is that we're expected to give so much of ourselves to people on the internet. And actually, it's completely up to us how much we choose to share. So I think really sit with, if you're feeling like, oh, I don't know about posting this, just sit with it for a bit. Sometimes like there's beauty in discomfort, and sometimes sharing things out of your comfort zone is great. But if you feel like this could potentially damage my reputation, someone else's, or bring harm to another person, I'd stay away from it. And And I think just engaging in negativity generally, that's my personal opinion, by the way, and some people would say otherwise. And by negativity, I don't mean speaking up on political things that are important to you. I think if that feels good for you and if that's something that you believe in within your own personal brand or your brand, absolutely. But personally, for me, like, engaging in negativity means like feeding the trolls. I've been trolled so many times, and some of my mates who are also content creators love it, and they'll like spark like these big, like beefy comments and like these big threads. That's fine for them. I personally wouldn't advise it. Unless you feel like I can really handle that, I'm just block, delete, move on with it. So I think engaging with negativity and posting from a place of emotion, and also just posting to tick a box. That's something I'd stay away from. If you feel like, oh, I haven't posted this week, I'm just going to upload this picture and quickly put together a caption. Quality over quantity always. That's what I mean about that consistency piece. It's not about just pure visibility. It's about like, what do I want to be known for? What's my legacy? Like, what does this piece of content say about me in the long term? And I think personal branding, brand building, community building, it is a long game, and we do have to think about everything we post is a digital footstep into our digital doorway that we're opening people into. That footprint's going to be there forever. Like, we have to think about the impact that that's going to have on our long-term brand and on our long-term strategy as well.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I feel like with my own stuff, like a lot of the, especially when you're doing like podcast and podcast clips, you just have this, oh, like we should be putting out like 5 clips or 6 clips, but actually like 3 of them, like they're trash. So what are we doing?
Yeah.
We're just hurting ourselves. Like it's not valuable enough, and you're just better off just holding back the like absolute gems.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's talk about your journey a little bit. So you were like agency, brand side, and packed it in.
Yeah.
Well, I've had enough of this bullshit.
Yeah.
I'm going to go out and do my own thing.
Yeah.
What's that journey been like, and how have you ended up in this position where like you've got a really successful business and you're a published author?
It's been a roller coaster, that's for sure. I graduated uni, and I had quite bad social anxiety in my 20s. So I found in my early 20s, I found going into the workplace post uni. Also, uni does not set you up for even knowing how to send an email. Like, I remember being in email threads, like, what do these words mean? Like, how do I reply to a client? And I think, I work with lots of unis now, and something I'm really keen to teach students is just like etiquette in the workplace, because even that is like a soft skill in itself. So I went into agency world, also agencies. If anyone's worked in an agency, sending you lots of love and a pat on the shoulder, because it's hard work. It's really like fast paced. Clients demand a lot. It was a great experience. So glad I did it. I learned so much. And then went from there into fashion and events, did lots of different things. I did digital, social, influencer marketing, email marketing, paid advertising. And I remember feeling quite insecure about the fact that I'd done lots of different things and that my experience was quite like varied. And I guess just feeling a bit inferior. I'm so glad that I job hopped, and I'm so glad that I worked in different industries, because I feel like I've now got this really well-rounded approach to the work that I do. And it took me a while to find my groove. It took me a while to find what it is that I stand for. And when I first got approached to write the book, a publishing agency reached out to me and said, have you ever thought about writing a book? And I was so terrified. I was like, absolutely not. I say this all the time. My content goes out with grammar, incorrect grammar. There's typos on it. Like, I'm not great with attention to detail. That is one of my flaws. I try and work on it. I just hold my hands up. Like, it's not my strength. So when they reached out, I felt really flattered, firstly. And they said to me, we want you to write a book called Social Media Made Easy. And I was like, okay, cool. And then I sat with it and I was like, I'm not writing that book, because A, it's not easy. And also my work is so much more than social media.
Yeah.
It's about community. It's about connecting people. So I actually went back and said, I can't write that book. I've had another idea. What do you think of community as your currency? pulled together a new proposal, and they really liked it, thankfully. But I think what led me to the book deal was through building my personal brand, sharing my content, pushing myself out of my comfort zone, doing things like this, which I have to say, for anyone watching, it used to absolutely terrify me. And I really empathise with people who want to speak on podcasts and pitch themselves for opportunities, who maybe feel fearful. I've been there and I so get it. But I promise you, if you make small and aligned steps towards your big goals, it's going to help you build your confidence over time. And I attribute most of the opportunities that I've had through just making small micro shifts into the way that I approach my work and my mindset. And breaking out of social anxiety was really hard. Like, even doing something like this, I would have found really difficult. But it's through the power of community, and it's through the power of just making small steps every day to change my own confidence and speak to people on the tube, give a compliment to a stranger. Like, it all kind of just, they're little things, but I believe it is the small things that enable us to do the bigger things, like the book. But yeah, since I left my full-time work, it's just been go with Selfhood. And I would also say networking has been an absolute game changer for me. Going to events, talking to people, reaching out on LinkedIn and just saying, I love the content that you post, we should go for coffee. And just ask people. Like, I think, especially in the UK, I think we're just like really reserved, and we're just like, oh no, what if they say no? Okay, cool, that's fine. They're probably busy. That's okay. Like, follow up in a couple of months. So I think, like, my friend Steph, who runs a platform called Fuck Being Humble, has this really great analogy, and she's like, create your own stage. Mm-hmm. If you see an opportunity that you think you'd be great for, but you haven't been asked to do it, create it for yourself. Like, go and do it for yourself. So I think that is also really solid advice. Just go and create your own opportunities.
Yeah. What does your business look like? Because I think it is super interesting. There's these platforms enable you to build a brand, like share your expertise, share your thoughts and insights. And people are maybe sat in a job thinking, oh yeah, that would be cool, I'd love to actually do that. But they don't really know what's on the other side of it. Like, is there actually any work out there? How did you think about building your business, and what does it look like now?
In terms of building the business, I worked really hard to grow a network while I was in full-time work. So if you're watching this and you're in a full-time job and your aim is to grow a business, get networking, go to events, speak to clients, speak to your bosses, speak to your boss's bosses, like, start to really build your reputation. Thankfully, when I decided to take the leap and I started off freelancing, I had already got so many industry networks. So I was really fortunate that I was just able to send emails to absolutely everyone, begging them to just give me anything. I did some really crappy jobs. And when I look back at what I was charging people, like, I earned way less in my first year of freelancing than I did in my salary. I think it was like actually half of what I earned in my salary. Like, it was a struggle, but I believed in it so much that I kept going. And I also think there's something about when you're doing it for yourself, it's almost like survival mode kicks in and you're like, I don't want to eat beans on toast for the rest of my life. Like, I need to make this work. So I think build a network as much as you can, get known for something, and just do a really, really good job. So I knew that I wanted to support brands with content. So I started to create my own content to showcase my capabilities. And then people started to say, like, oh, who does your social media? And I'd be like, I do it. They'd be like, oh, we need help with socials. Really thankful now that all of my new business comes through referrals and through building a network. And quite often the inquiries come through and they say, like, so-and-so gave me your details. But I, again, believe that is through community building. I've spent hours and hours and hours going to events, talking to people, getting my name out there. And also the content really helps. Like, having my following is not huge, by the way. In comparison to other people in my field, it's actually tiny. But I think what I do have, and I used to feel really uncomfortable saying this, but I've really I've really started to believe in the work that I do because I feel so deeply in my purpose when I help people. I think what I do is that I help people, and my style might not be for everybody, but I feel really grateful that the clients I do have now are a reflection of my brand and the kind of brands that I want to work with. And I've collaborated with brands that were on my vision board when I was at uni. Like, I'd love to do that one day, and they're now my clients. And I just think it's through being kind to people, patience. I mean, I've been doing this for 5 years. I've had the business 5 years now. The book came out last year, and there's been so much behind the scenes, stress, tears, difficult conversations, rejections, people like talking shit about your work and like taking the mick out of you behind your back. That is all part of the process. But I think, again, it's very live, laugh, love with me, but like resilience is so key. And I think if you believe in the work that you do, and if you believe in your message and your values, and most importantly, yourself, that will give you that inner drive to just keep going and keep pushing, because it's not easy. But also, like, being in full-time work isn't easy. I think like having a career isn't easy. And everyone has challenges, but I think having a really strong network and a community that you can rely on and that you can go to for advice and share ideas with is really, really important.
Yeah. And so you basically have, so there's the work, like kind of consultancy work.
Yeah.
You've got this like super engaged community. When you put on the events, how do you do that? You like arrange for like a dinner or a speaking event, and then you get a sponsor on board. How do you approach that?
It purely depends. So like last month I did a collab with Apple and I pitched myself to them. I just was like, I've written this book. I think you'd really like it. Can I give you a copy? Found the email of the person that I needed to get in touch with. She was like, this sounds cool. Come to the office. So I'm there like shaking. I literally had to call my mum like, oh, I'm going to Apple HQ. Like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And I just put this deck together of ideas, and we ended up co-collaborating on an event for International Women's Day. And it was like part of the Apple community, part my community, a panel event on how we can use community to be more confident. And then we used Apple products to get people drawing the most confident version of themselves. So it's a really collaborative experience. But yeah, it's either brand collabs, my own community events. I'll be doing one next month, which is just me, room full of people, having nice conversation, panel talks, discussions. I often get people to do like interactive creative things. A big part of my work is getting inspired off of your phone, check yourself before your notifications. So I get people to like draw certain things, get them to talk about it in groups. But I think because I've had social anxiety before, and I know how painful networking used to feel for me, I try and make my events as inclusive as possible when it comes to getting people to connect. Because walking into a room and just saying, hi, my name's John, I do blah, blah, blah. Yeah. It's like, it's kind of like, it can feel really awkward. Yeah. So I try and make it as easy as possible. But yeah, I love the events. I think I would recommend to anyone to not necessarily host your own events, because it's quite a lot of work and it can be quite stressful, but go to events and get a feel for the types of people. And there's so much out there. Eventbrite and Meetup are amazing. There's so many cool events happening at the moment.
What if you want to put one on? What do? You just get the Meetup page together? There's
loads of different ways you can do it. So the first thing I would ask is like, what's the purpose of the event? So is it like you want to connect founders who are struggling with loneliness? Just an idea off the top of my head. What's the premise? Who are the kind of founders that you're trying to reach? Is there an activity involved? And almost like work out like a plan. So when they get there, they're networking. When they get there, they're doing an activity. You finish with a panel talk, and then it's like drinks. Like, work out a formula. Then have a look at the spaces that could facilitate that. Loads of co-working spaces are crying out for events like this. So you could even pitch it to like co-working spaces or venues in your area, and find a space, find a time, find a date, and then just promo it. DM people, I'm hosting this, would love to see you there. And then work out the finer details on the night. Pull in an extra pair of hands or 5, depending on how many people that you've got there. But yeah, I also think like you don't need to overcomplicate events, and they don't need to be these all singing, all dancing, like goodie bags at the end. People genuinely, I think now more than ever, just want to connect, and they just want to be around other people and have conversations. So you can start small. You could have like 15 people if you wanted to. A book club is a good place to start if you're like, oh, I really want to connect people, but I don't know how. Do a co-working day. And then once you get a feel for how they run and how you like to run them, you can then go on to expand on it and grow them. But just do it. If you want to do an event, just do it.
Yeah, I'm inspired. We're going to do one.
Yes, I'm coming. Do it.
Yeah, I think as well. I've been to quite a few recently there where they're like dinners and yeah. Basically, you kind of take it in turns to go around and answer a question.
Yeah.
So it's the same question, everyone's answering the question, and you're just going around the circle, and like that's amazing because I think the other thing that happens at the networking, like the kind of networking events, is like everyone chats and they say, "Oh yeah, I'm doing this," and it all sounds great, and then you sit down, and then if they pose a really vulnerable question, all of a sudden and someone goes first and sets the tone for like what you're allowed to say, that can be super powerful. So
definitely, yeah. And I think again, like there's so much value in shared experience and knowing that people in the room are having a similar experience to you. I think that's where connection is really born. So yeah, I love that idea.
Let's talk about your brand partnerships because they're really cool. So there's like Adobe, there's other brands that you've worked with. How have you created those opportunities?
They've all been inbound. They've all come to me, which I feel so grateful to be able to say. The only brand I pitched myself to was Apple. And now that I've done that once, I will definitely do that again. Interestingly, I was having lunch with a friend yesterday, Lucy Mountain. She's an amazing content creator. She's like anti-diet fitness, and she went to a content creator summit. And she said, brands were saying, we are crying out for pitches. Don't wait for us to come to you. If you've got a cool content idea, please come to us. So I also think I'm very fortunate in that my partnership with Adobe was organic, and Microsoft and the other brands I've worked with, they've come to me. However, I think that's quite a unique position to be in. And I will absolutely, now I've heard that, and now I did it the first time with Apple, I have no shame now. I'm going to go pitch myself.
Yeah.
And if you see a brand you really love, like, and you've got a cool idea, I think just go for it. Because quite often when you look at, I consult with lots of brands as well, and I work closely with in-house teams, and not all of them have dedicated talent specialists or influencer marketing managers. So the social media manager is doing everything from posting, scheduling, paid ads, influencer briefing. So actually, it's really refreshing for them to have a content creator come to them and say, like, I'm going to do your job for you. Here's a great idea. Here's what I need from you. So don't be afraid to pitch yourself as well. But I also think, I've forgotten her name, but there's an amazing content creator. She's a graphic designer, and she just started doing rebrands of the brands that she loved.
Yeah.
I think the first one was North Face, and then they reached out to her and they were like, we actually want to collab. So like, tag brands, use their products, let them notice you, and they'll probably end up coming to you as well.
Yeah. Who are some examples of brands who are crushing it on social?
Right now, brands who are doing an amazing job. I'm going to talk about a really small business called It's Roop. And they are a handmade bag company. She makes sustainable bags from dead stock fabrics. Oh my gosh, her storytelling ability is incredible, and she takes you on such a journey, and she has this real creative vision that you just feel from her content. So example, she designed a bag and she created this reel with a voiceover, and she'd taken a picture of a girl in the street a year ago, and she'd gone on to develop this bag. But she talks about the person she's designed it for. And she's like, I designed it for the girl who's on the move, that has her life in her bag. And then there's a visual of like a makeup bag, change of clothes, like, and you're like, I'm that person. I need that bag. But she tells you this, like, it's almost like a poetic story of how she's seen something and brought it to life a year later. And she's got a really good she's got a really good way of telling stories, and I think it makes you feel more connected to the brand and her thinking and her purpose. And it's not just a pretty bag. It's like, oh, you've really thought about like why this person needs this bag. So she's one person. And then from a personal brand perspective, my friend Kelsey, on Instagram, she's called Coming Up Roses. She's a graphic designer and a brand specialist. And the way that she communicates, the way that she adds value, her balance between sharing personal stuff and sharing brand stuff is amazing. But she has a close friends list, and she just shares so much value in how to create a brand. And I didn't know I was on the list until I was in there, and I was just like, I get all this free amazing content. And it's not even like heavily designed curated stuff. She's just sharing like, I saw this and I thought it could be applicable to XYZ. Here's how I'd go and make this happen from a brand perspective. And you're like, you're just giving me this for free. So I think it's like the brands that are telling great stories, and the brands and creators who are providing value in a really authentic way. And again, that word authenticity is so overused. There's also another brand called Damps and Madder. From a creative perspective, their content is so standout. If you want inspo into how to create cool videos, they'll do things like if there's a lemon on a bag, they'll tap the lemon and then like a lemon will fall in her hand, and it's just like really cool, engaging, eye-catching content from a more creative perspective. But I actually think the smaller brands and independent brands are doing a better job because they have less budget and they have to be more creative.
Yeah, I think you're almost like spoiled with riches. There's like I think I heard you talk about the Range Rover ad where it's like posted on TikTok and it's just like so overproduced
it's so bad.
That it completely flops.
It completely flops. But then also like you look at McDonald's, who have got, I don't even want to know what their marketing budget is, like millions and millions. They're uploading iPhone content because they know that's what's going to land. Like people don't want to see a glossy burger that I know I'm going to go to Mackey's and it's not going to look like that. It's like, let's be real about the brands that we are. Let's also own who we are. But I think that's a really interesting shift to see. Yeah, brands like McDonald's who have got budgets to do huge video productions, they're leaning into native content because TikTok say it, don't make ads, make TikToks. We want to see real content. So yeah, I personally think looking at smaller brands, I also love Monzo, not necessarily a small brand, but their social strategy is great. It's very down to earth. It's very aligned with their target audience. Again, it's like they know their audience is spending behavior. Like they'll upload a notification like, you have £2 to last you till the end of the month. We've all been there. And then they'll talk about like the regret of a delivery at the weekend that you weren't supposed to order. It's like they're really in it with how their community is spending, their behaviors, but then they also provide value on top of that as well. So I think they're also a good case study to look at.
Yeah. Let's wrap it with the quickfire questions.
Okay.
Top 3 books.
Oh my gosh. The Morning Miracle. Oh no. I need to double check that's what it's called.
Yeah, that's Hal Elrod.
Hal Elrod, yeah, because there's one that's called like the 5 a.m. I read that about 5 years ago and it literally changed my life. Mm-hmm. Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself by Dr. Joe Dispenza, and Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton.
Nice. Kindest thing someone's ever done for you?
God, I might cry. The kindest thing anyone has ever done for me. I don't think it's a singular experience. I think it's every time I've doubted myself and somebody has said, I believe in you. And that happens so much because I've built a community. The messages that from people that have never met me that say things like, I just want to say the work you do is really important. Sometimes I sit and I'm on the bus and I just burst into tears because I just think that is so unbelievably kind. And I know it sounds like really like cheesy, but I just think you don't have to say that to me. So I think it's every small act of kindness on the days where you need it most that keep people going. So I can't pinpoint an exact moment of kindness. I think it's all the little ones when you're not feeling your best self. So I'd also say something I say to everyone, if you think someone is doing a great job, please tell them, even if they look like they're killing it and they've got like a huge platform, not saying my platform's huge, by the way, but I'm just saying, like, if there's a creator that you follow and they're huge, like, please tell them, because it makes people's day. And not just creators, just your friends, your family. Just like, I'm really proud of you. Don't think we tell each other enough.
No, 100% true. Top 3 creators to follow?
Top 3 creators to follow. Steph Sword-Williams from Fuck Being Humble. I've spoken about her loads today, but she's just doing amazing stuff at the minute. And she is just such a voice that we all need to listen to. Poonam Dufa from Yes Mate. She is an escape from the digital noise in the online space. Her content is amazing. It's very much about textures and feeling aligned and attuned with yourself, and very much like the check yourself before your notifications message. A lot of her work is around being tactile and creative offline. And then Giselle Lapompe Moore, I always get her name wrong, so I might need to double check that. But she is a slow living advocate. She's also written an amazing book, and she talks a lot about the art of slowing down, stillness, romanticizing everything in your life, being more creative, living life non-conventionally. She is a breath of fresh air.
Wicked, love it. And your one message to someone who's thinking about starting a community in 2024?
I think quite often the thing that stops us from starting communities and putting ourselves out there is the fear of judgment. And I always say to people, anyone who is judging you for trying your best, showing up as your whole self, doing the thing that you're really proud of, it's always judging themselves. It's actually not about you. Anyone who's got anything negative to say about another person just trying their best is usually deeply insecure, and they're just projecting. So, can I swear? I won't swear, but F the haters. That was really, really lame. Please don't put that in there.
No, I love it. We'll keep it in there.
No!
All right, let's wrap it there.